All right, this video is about the fence. We got to do some preparation so that we can run new field fence. And some of those preparations require us to replace some corners. And the corner we're going to be doing today is a corner that works out to be a 90-degree angle. I won't cut the tops off of anything until I've got the field fence up. So it'll stay like this until we run that field fence. And this looks like it's made out of all new wood. But in fact, some of the bracing is recycled wood. So let's get into this. So here's the old corner section, and I'm going to start with my impact drive for removing screws. And a lot of times the screws will be rusted all the way through, and they just snap off at the head or shortly below it. I also used a lot of metal bracing, something you'd expect to see maybe on a shelf or on the outside of a wooden box. The wire fence never wrapped around the corner. It actually was cut and stopped at the large post. So I used a lot of wire staples, probably more than I needed, to hold the fence in place. And I usually get all of those out the same way. I take a screwdriver, whether it's a Phillips or a flathead, and I beat it in behind the staple, and then I just use the screwdriver like a lever and force the staple up and out. The fence post has been here for about 25 years, and when I installed it the first go round, I ended up taking the wire fence and wrapping it around a small piece of metal, and I screwed that metal to the large post. I don't know if I do it the same way, but it definitely worked and it held up, because 25 years later, I'm taking it apart. So now that all those fasteners are removed, I just have a few more staples before I can get the fence out of the way and remove the last two support braces. And I'll do the same thing to the back of the fence. I'll remove the screws, get out all the staples, move the fence out of the way, and I can start to focus my attention on removing these posts from out of the ground. We have sandy soil where I live. So if I wiggle these posts around, I normally can create a void in the ground where the post is. And I never put any gravel or cement or anything around them when I set the post. So normally I can just pull them straight up. I'm not saying it's necessarily easy or fun, but normally I can get them straight up. If I have a bunch to do, I will go get my tractor, and I will use a tractor and a chain and rip them up out of the ground, so to speak. Something else that makes a bigger difference is whether or not it's rained recently. If it's dry and there's not much water just below the surface, they come out fairly easy. But if it's been raining a lot, it's almost like a suction. They will not come up. Here I've got the replacement 4x4 post. And you can put them straight down in the holes they came out of. And I've been doing it this way for years. And this is what the hole looks like once you pulled out the 4x4 post. And you can see it's just slightly bigger where I did all that wiggling around, so to speak. And you just set it back in the hole. And if the hole's 2 feet deep, the post goes down 2 feet. Well, this is where you would have expected to see me pulling out that 6x6 post. But you would be wrong. Both to your and my surprise, that post wasn't even in the ground. It went down about 6 inches and that was it. And it just fell over once I grabbed the support brace. But it was just outside of the camera's view. And now I'm using these post hole diggers to dig out a hole, hoping that there wasn't some big tree root in the way that kept me from digging the hole the first time. I try to get the holes about 2 to 2.5 feet deep. I use 6x6 posts on the corner, but it's more of a design aesthetic than anything else. I'm sure that if I used a 4x4 post and braced it properly, it would work just fine. I'll use the handle of a broken rake to compact the dirt around this post. I'll get some of these tools out of the way and then we can work on the bracing. This is the usual working setup for me. Park the lawnmower with the cart in the shade, close enough to the barn that I can run the electrical cord to it. I'll start by taking one of the 4x4 posts and making sure that it's going to be long enough after I cut off any bad wood. I'm working on 2 projects at the same time today, and the corner fencing is going to need 4 pieces of cut wood, and I will label those 5, 6, 7, and 8. So now that I've got this end cut off, I've got to take a second and think, which bracing is this and what number is it? And then I'll look over the wood to make sure I've got the best side facing up and the worst side facing down, and I will mark the board. I will cut this to the proper length later on. Right now I'm just trying to get through all my scraps, so I'll set this off to the side and move on to the next piece. Numbering the wood is really important and helpful, especially when you've got multiple projects or a lot of pieces you need to cut. I also found the process goes quicker if I'm doing similar tasks all at the same time. I'll have to get the miter saw out of the way for the next step, and that is to sand everything. It is so important when you're going to recycle wood and use it again to try to make it look as good as possible. What you don't want is you don't want to finish your project and be able to tell that piece is old and that piece is new. So if you sand everything and do a really good job of it, when the project is finished, a lot of time the scrap wood is indistinguishable from the new wood. Getting rid of years of algae and weathering really changes the whole look of the wood. I've cut a few of these boards to the right length, and now I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill some holes and start some screws, so that way I can just screw them into the post once I'm ready. Most of this wood is going to go together with 3.5 inch number 10 deck screws. So the drill bit's a little bit bigger than the screw that's going in, and I try to drill the hole about 1.5 inches to 2 inches away from the edge of the board. I'll put 1 hole or screw on one side and 2 holes or 2 screws on the other side, and that sort of makes like a triangle shape that'll end up being screwed into the post. I'll measure from the ground up and put a mark 32.5 inches on the post, and that mark will be the bottom of the horizontal brace. I'll end up using some new wood for the diagonal braces, and I'll mark those. I'll take the piece of wood back to the miter saw, and after adjusting the angle of the cut, I'll cut both ends, and I do the same thing for both of these braces. I install a larger drill bit for these construction screws and drill the holes. And then I use the impact driver and get the bolt started. I'll make sure I have the top of this diagonal brace lined up with the mark that we had put on the post. And it should only take one of these 6-inch construction screws to permanently secure the brace to the post. I had to remove the extension on the impact driver to get the bottom in. I just grabbed the next piece of wood, and it was numbered to go in this location. After getting the first screw in, I went to the other side to get the other 2 screws. Looking at the level, I used my body weight and lined everything up before I put in the last 3 screws. Putting on the other horizontal brace was even easier. All I had to do was set it on top of the diagonal brace and put the screws in. It took a lot more effort to get the other side connected. I thought I was going to have to go get a ratchet strap at first to hold the 2 pieces together. After marking the next brace, I cut it, I drilled it, I started the screws, and now I'm screwing the brace in place. Well, here's the completed 90-degree corner. I know it's going to be a lot stronger just for the fact that the 6x6 post is actually in the ground this time. And I still have 2 more corners to do on the back of my property. One's a 45 degree and one's more than a 90. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss those. Well, thanks for watching the channel. Now you know how I do my corners for my field fence. Like, subscribe, check out my playlist, and I'll see you in some more fence videos.